Thank you, Courtney, and thank you all for making it on a Wednesday morning, up if you can. Well done, you're surviving. It's good. We have, like I said, double header this morning, starting off context and content. And we're going to get onto AI later this morning, but first we're going to be talking about the role of partnerships between clients and trusted media brands, which is what World Media Group is all about. I'm thrilled with the panel we have this morning. We have Ebru Ogzuc, who is the Global Head of Brand and Reputation for Vodafone Business, and Natasha Byrne, who is the Managing Partner at UN Worldwide. And really this morning is about talking about the dynamics between clients and agencies and media owners and how we can all work best together to create the best media partnerships we can and really make the most impactful work. Before we get into kind of some best practice stuff, Ebru, maybe Vodafone Business, huge global brand, operating in many, many markets. We're really World Media Group is about those international media partners with trusted editorial. How does that fit into your overall marketing mix?
Well, I mean, first of all, like I said, it's a big brand, and I'm sitting at a global role, and so I don't have one market. And it's all about how I can add value to already local markets that have their media plans, media partners, and so on. So what can we add on top to what they currently have is what we're after.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And within that, obviously, there's other ways to reach global audiences, but working with an editorial brand or a journalism brand, how's that differentiated from, say, a mass open programmatic buy?
Yeah.
How do you think about that?
Well, I mean, as you all well know, the media landscape is quite complex, so we really scrutinize who we work with.
Mm-hmm.
So we look at a number of things. One is, does that add value to our brand? Does it bring credibility? Can we leverage the brand in our footprint with their events and so on? So that's something we look at. Does the media partner fit our thought leadership? Because thought leadership is so important. A recent research, for example, people say that 61% of people say media partnerships together with thought leadership make a positive impact in them deciding who to work with. And 91% say they think thought leadership played a crucial role rather than traditional product marketing to their decision-making process. So we look at that as well. We look at the sustainability part of the things as well. So we use a lot of external data as well to convince the C-suite and our CEOs. So we look at Ipsos affluent surveys, Global Web Index. It's all about bringing as hard data as possible to the equation.
To make that decision.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. So then, Natasha, beyond Vodafone Business, you're looking at multiple clients, multiple different challenges. Is there a lot of consistency with how international media brands fits in, or are there different ways that you can use it?
There's a lot of different ways that you can use international media brands. I think international media is a lot more trusted. They're seen across they're across lots of different markets, and you have its a reputation and with association to those trusted brands. So I think that's the first part. The second part is that it's a lot simpler when you're able to work with one partner across lots of different markets rather than going to lots of different local partners. So looking at whether they have the reach, the scalability, and one thing I've learned is that actually, a lot of clients have limitations in terms of the content that they can create, also the creatives is very, very expensive. And when you work with partners that have content studios that have that skill set within their publishers, within the publishers, then it makes it a lot simpler. You can really leverage their production capabilities and create really, really compelling creatives and content.
Exactly, spot on. So then we're going to talk about all those opportunities are amazing. No surprise to people in this room. It's quite hard work. It can be quite challenging. Ebru, you were talking about previously the different approaches to those partnerships,
Yes.
whether it's editorially led or more advertising content led.
Yes. So I mean, first of all, talking to a lot of media partners, the editorial quite often use the state and the church. And there are pros and cons, and I've learned, we had a number of global partnerships. I think the success is in the right mix, And I think the successful formula that I use is three legs. It's the editorial content. You need the editorial content as well. You need the brand content. And then the reach with the media outlets, what the partner brings on the table, as well as the So I think having the right mix is so important. And actually, the production quality, I'm obsessed. And actually, that's something I learned from my grandmother. She used to look after me when I was really little, and we used to watch a lot of movies. And she used to say, the best movies is when there's a lion at the beginning roaring. I don't know if you remember. And it was MGM Studios, and you know, every time there was a film with that, she said, look at the production, it's unbelievable. She could have been in the film industry, but she was a very lovely housewife. And I wasn't quite sure about the role of the lion in that, but I think the production quality and what you get is unbelievable. I think the thing that we learned the hard way was with editorial content, it's brilliant. You give a brief, they go away and do it, and it's brilliant. And the way we use editorial content is more for visionary stuff. It's what it can bring. And then the editorial content, the branded content, it's like us producing. And my team wasn't prepared. All of a sudden, we had the brief for 4 content, which was part of the deal, and you want to put into that contract as many contents as possible, and you don't realize how much work you're assigning for yourself.
Yeah.
So it's really finding the right balance. And I think with branded content, what we learned is it's not like producing TV campaigns, so you still need to leave it to the partner, but you're more on top of it. But it needs to be not about yourself, it needs to be about customer outcomes. You need one central character to carry the story. So there are lots of learnings that we learned. But what I would say is when we looked at the results, the branded content that the media partner produced for us performed much better than our agency-produced advertising.
Interesting.
In terms of interest and so on.
Yeah. And that was, when you say that was branded content produced by the media partner rather than the pure editorial.
Yes.
So both can work, both have a value to your brand, both deliver. Natasha, obviously, you're evaluating multiple media owners coming to different solutions. Touching on what Ebru was saying, as an agency, how do you think about the kind of workload, for want of a better word, in terms of managing some of these projects? Because I guess a very straightforward editorial sponsorship, very easy to sign off and deliver, but obviously there's a lack of control, whereas a more branded content piece, you get more control, but it's a lot more work for the agency and for the client.
Yeah. I think what's really important is upfront that you are clear to the client on what is required from them and how much of their time and also the project timeline. So then they're clear and they can also make that decision, because I have some clients that have 1 or 2 media people per country, and that means that it will take up a significant amount of their time. So I think we need to be clear on that. But to make it worthwhile, we have a look at a few things. How scalable is it? So, is it in multiple markets? Is it integral to actually what we're trying to say? So is, like if you have key thought leadership pillars around key topics, does this actually bring that thought leadership to the forefront? Does it help the brand future-proof and where the brand's going? And finally, I think what's really important as well is in looking at sorry, I've lost my train. The final part is really in terms of
where that goes over the course of the next couple of years, and that, I guess from what you're saying, it's a longer-term strategy in a lot of cases. It's really interesting. One of the things I wanted to, this is a controversial thing to say in Cannes, lots of advertisers are talking about the same things. So if you talk certain buzzwords, AI, sustainability, equity and equality, there are certain things where a lot of brands are active in that space and making a lot of branded content. Really for both of you, but how do you think about making your partnerships really distinctive? So for example, Vodafone Business is very active in the sustainability space.
Yes.
How do you distinguish from others who are doing things in that space?
Love the question. It's so much about walking the talk. I think as a brand, a lot of brands talk the walk. I think I love walking it. For that, for example, we recently partnered with Extreme E, which, you know, we were in Formula One originally, then we moved to Formula E, the electric cars. That also didn't quite work, then we moved to Extreme E. And what it is an off-road electric vehicle racing in the middle of nowhere. They do 5 races a year. And all the paddock cars, everything is delivered via a ship they have, St. Helena. So that's why it's only 5 races. So everything gets carried. And they built from scratch the paddock, the command center, everything in the middle of nowhere in the Amazons. We were in Sardinia. I didn't go to Amazon, unfortunately. I was in the European races. But they set up everything in 4 weeks. And then they put it back in 3 weeks and then off. So imagine in the middle of nowhere, they have no connectivity. So we bring our technology, we establish the mobile private network, which allows them to talk to the drivers. So it's really showing our technology in action, which is so critical. And then the other piece is they have legacy programs. So everywhere they go, they interact with the local communities there. So one example we have is, and I think it's one of the best contents we built together with them, was in Sardinia 2 years ago, where in 2021 wildfires across Mediterranean, it wasn't only in Italy, but in a number of countries. So they ruined 20,000 hectares, 1,000 people were moved. This is just in Sardinia. 30 million bees were killed. So we went there and we established ultra-early fire detection systems, IoT sensors, into the trees. And we did that together with the drivers and so on. So very great content it makes. These are some of the, you know, well-known drivers. And it detects fires 2.5 hours before any camera can. So it's in a small space. Yeah. So anyway, that to me was a...
So you're already thinking about sustainability of this event with this sports sponsorship beyond, you know, the emissions of an advertising campaign, but actually the sustainability of the event itself.
Yes,
It's really
yes.
it's a huge undertaking.
Yes, yes.
But that's really impressive. Natasha, I guess not every client has the resources to take sustainability to that extent, which is, you know, impressive. But in terms of that differentiation and what you were looking for from media owners to really make a partnership stand out, how do you...
I think it's first of all having that discussion with the client and really being honest about where are their key strengths around those specific topics, because sustainability is a lot of things, right? And what is it that makes you different? What's your USP? What's your differentiation? And how do you actually match up compared to your competition? Not just your competition in your category, but your competition against those topics across all brands, because, you know, mental availability isn't just for Vodafone and Vodafone's competitors, but it's everyone who's talking about those topics. And then once we identify what those USPs are, we then do an audit of, you know, who's talking about what, and how are people engaging with the different pieces of content. And based on that, we kind of map out what are the white spaces, what are the opportunities that match up to the strengths of our clients, but also there isn't a huge amount of content out there that's going to be competing for that space. And then that's when we start, you know, and a lot of the insights also come from the Washington Post and BBC, and all of the different trusted partners will come to us also with those insights, and then we kind of map that out, and that's how we build out the strategy. It's important to not just be talking generically about sustainability, about innovation and all those buzzwords, but what does it mean to you? What can you offer to it? And actually, like, what is the opportunity in the future?
Yeah, and just to build on that for a second, so you touched that. You know, some of those ideas are coming from publishers, from media owners themselves, who are experts in these spaces. Big partnerships need a lot of partners. There's a lot of stakeholders. So from an agency perspective, how do you manage that? Have you got tips on how to manage that complexity? Because I know that can be challenging.
Yes, it is challenging, and I don't think agencies have cracked it, to be honest, and it's still kind of like a work in progress. I think the first thing is making sure that we're briefing partners well in terms of what we're trying to achieve. I was like reading a stat that like 90%, sorry, 90% of clients say that they give a good brief, but like 75% of agencies agree. So yeah, so let's make sure that we're giving the right brief, that we're also showing what the scorecard is and what the success criteria is against the briefs, so then publishers know what you're trying to achieve. Having a proper kind of like roles and responsibilities clearly outlined, really boring, but actually so important because things get missed if the creative agency thinks that the publisher is doing something that actually they should be doing. So having everything mapped out and a really clear project timeline, as I mentioned, in terms of timings, etc. But we're testing different ways of working because I think that we always brief publishers differently. We go to Wall Street Journal, we go to Bloomberg, etc. We go to lots of different partners separately, and then they come back to us with lots of different ideas, right? And that which link up to what we're trying to achieve. But then when they're all different ideas, A, the customer is seeing different views of us, and B, it's a lot harder to manage all the different pieces of content and where it should live, etc. So we are starting to do things. We have something called Fearless Ideas Forum, and we get different publishers to come, and we brief them all at the same time, and we say, this is what we're trying to achieve. And rather than brainstorm kind of like what the activation is going to be, let's brainstorm what the territories are going to be. What is the creative platform? What is the overall integral idea? And then they can go away and kind of start to build on that integral idea. But it's a really nice way of kind of like getting one red thread across your actual activation. And also it's an opportunity for then all of us to go, okay, so how are we going to measure this thing? Rather than everyone coming back to us with like different KPIs, etc. How are we going to measure this thing? What is success? Let's agree on all of that up front and try and work it out.
That's interesting. And does that reflect how you're working?
It does, and the other side of the coin, I would say, I absolutely agree with you. We don't get the brief right always, but sometimes I prefer to go with a loose brief because then I want to see what is possible. It doesn't need to be set in stone. So I'd like to work in flexible terms in that, but I want the agency to challenge me with the brief and so on. And for me, in those kind of partnerships, the agency is my safety. I always like to talk to media partners directly because I don't think Chinese whispers work every time, so I need to be in the meetings. But I need the agency to help me with the evaluation, bring the hard data, bring the objectivity. So why did you partner with this partner or that partner? Well, it wasn't me. We worked with the agency, so my agency recommends. So I think that's really important. And then the agency also helps me keep on track.
Yeah, and has a much wider view of the metrics that over.
Yes,
Sure.
yes,
So
yes.
one more question, and then we're going to have some questions from the room, hopefully. So have a think about some questions. But just you touched on it before, Natasha. You come up with these amazing ideas. You get the team together. Measurement then becomes really critical for both of you. And I was interested, both Natasha, how you think about that measurement in terms of evaluating a media owner performance or a publisher partnership performance. And then, of course, Ebru, you may presumably be presenting the Success Day campaigns using different metrics when you go back to your CFO or your board or whoever it is. So, Natasha, starting with you, from a media perspective, agency perspective, what kind of metrics are you looking for?
Oh, that really depends on the brief.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But there's different parts that we look at. I talked about the scorecard when we do the brief for the media partners, and that's how you determine whether a partner is going to be successful to actually activate on the campaign. And that's around kind of like reach, around how innovative it is, how integral the idea is linked to what we're trying to achieve or talk about. Also, we talk about like brand metrics and how is this going to contribute to our brand metrics, brand awareness, consideration, etc. And then there's going to be the hard media KPIs, right? Around kind of like how efficient is it? How much time do people spend with that content? Because if we're creating content and actually it's like 12 seconds and people aren't really engaging with it, then it's not as successful as we think, especially when we're thinking about content partnerships. So it's a combination of all of these different factors. What I'd like to get to is actually a uniform measurement framework across all the partners. So we're all kind of measuring against the same things, but also using the same partners to measure kind of like awareness, etc., across the kind of brand tracking that our content partnerships have.
I was going to say, certainly for the brand measurement,
Yeah.
really interesting to take a kind of holistic approach.
Yeah.
And Ebru, brand measurements, brand impact, are those the figures that you're reporting back to?
Yes,
the
I
leaders as
am.
well?
I mean, first of all, I don't present anymore to the CFO. We present to the CEO because our CFO says, I learned from Ebru that this isn't a cost center, it's a profit center.
Right.
You know what we do.
Oh, I love that.
This is the last time I was presenting, he was in the meeting and he didn't make any comments, so it was great. But we look at it from a marketing funnel. It starts with the media reach, for awareness and so on, what are the metrics, then we go into the engagement figures, and then of course, the media reach is one thing, then comes the editorial content, and then your brand content. So that's how the funnel works. We always do a brand study before and after, and that always works. And then what I do is both qual and quant from the markets. I do survey, and it's not me, it's the markets. We use those are their inputs and so on. So
Great. So you've got a pretty full set
it's
of
a pretty
research
full,
metrics.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
That's interesting. And those are not necessarily, it's interesting that the Vodafone business is thinking about all those impacts on the brand rather than, say, performance marketing metrics. Those are just considered completely separately, or that?
No, it's not. And actually, I forgot to touch on that. The whole ABM capability now is brilliant. And we can see, we target the companies we want to talk to, especially when you look at US and APAC, you can waste the money
Yeah.
pretty fast. So it's really targeting the companies, targeting the right audience. And now with these tools, it's possible.
To actually find your
So
specific
that,
customers.
yes, exactly. So that is definitely part of the metrics.
Brilliant. Good. So we have amazing partnerships, good mix of editorial and branded content, team of stakeholders working together, amazing measurements, brilliant. What could possibly go wrong? Questions from the room? Any challenges that other people have faced, or things that they'd like to ask the panel about?
I've got a question about context, probably more for Ebru, as you're really involved in your brand's reputation a lot. We know how important the work of journalism is in today's world, and I think we're coming up to a lot of elections around the world. 50%, I think, something crazy. People are going to be voting in elections this year around the world. How do you feel about the context of politics and journalism and your brand being next to those areas? Because I think a lot of brands think about it differently, and then obviously from an agency side as well, if that's something you're seeing brands embrace or shy away from.
Yeah, great question. To your point, well, first of all, it's a very interesting year. We haven't had this many elections, I think, in a year. And then there's conflict in every region. And I heard it somewhere, I think there's more people working on conflict than peace, which can be true. So as a brand, what are we going to do? Shut up and just be quiet? That's not what we're doing. So absolutely showing up in partnering with trusted brands is so important. I mean, I'm sure this would be familiar with all of you. My mother calls, bless her, and she's reading stuff in Facebook and so on. And it's like, this isn't trusted media. Look, check the source. And she's a very well-educated woman. She's an engineer, and she's just lost her plot, sometimes with what she's exposed to. So it's just so important to stand with trusted brands, be out there. And this year, that was one of my selling points to my CEO this year for our global media partners. I said, if we don't partner this year, we should never, because with all the elections going on, so everyone will be watching more news and so on. So we want to be out there.
Yeah, I think that's an amazing answer, and I think this is an industry-wide challenge, as you mentioned. Natasha, from you have, lots of ones.
I have a lot of clients, and I think it's really important to champion appearing against news. And we had this instance during COVID, where clients just wanted to take anything that had COVID on it. They didn't want to appear against it. And it's really detrimental to journalism and publishers when you start taking a stance like that. So I think that For us, it's we're appearing against elections. The only kind of like instances where I think that we need to be a bit more careful is dependent on the brand's strapline or what their creative is. And I'll give an example. I work on Accenture, and we did a big campaign launch during the US elections, and their strapline was "Let there be change." Now, that is not a time when you want your brand to be appearing against US kind of elections coverage. But otherwise, I think that we need to ensure that we are supporting journalism, we're supporting publications, and appearing against content that you know people might think is a bit worrying. But as long as it's trusted and it's like being researched and it's covering the news of today that people want to read about, then I don't see a problem with appearing against it.
Good. Any other questions in the room?
Can I maybe follow up on that point as well, actually? Because one of the things you were mentioning, Ebru, is like trust the source, right? Trust the brand when it is established. I run a small analytics firm, AI firm, and we talk a lot with people who worry about deep fakes, both in terms of text, what we work in, and audio and video and so on. How do you then respond, or how do you think we should respond when a deepfake video of your CEO goes online talking about something completely antithetical to your brand values?
Yeah.
That becomes hard, even for, I guess, your mother, to then differentiate and say, yes, this is something I can trust, and this is something I should just ignore.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of our jobs is getting more difficult right now with AI. It's really...
And easier.
Yeah.
It's not a bad news, right?
So the whole authenticity, I think for brands in general, if you're using AI, you have to be transparent. And if you're not saying there is AI, then you have to question. You know? But yeah, I wish I had an answer to the difficulty.
Well,
But we're all learning.
I think that's a perfect segue because we're about to have a panel specifically focused on
Brilliant.
AI. So thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Ebru and Natasha.